Are there engines named after ancient kings and gods? Is Misty Island Rescue a Shakespeare play in disguise? Who exactly is Skarkaloe? The names of the Railway series and Thomas and Friends might be able to answer all of these questions and more. We've talked about the deep lore of Sodor many times on this channel, but today we're doing something I've never seen before. There are so many characters in this franchise, and so many of their names have a deeper meaning or are just funny in jokes to real life. Today we'll cover characters introduced in the books and the TV show, going through them in alphabetical order. Here is your complete guide to the hidden meanings of the names on the island of Sodor. Alaric and Eric. The Culdee Fell Railways number 7 and 8 respectively, Alaric and Eric are named after two mythological kings in the Old Norse sagas, who ruled Sweden side by side. Accounts differ as to exactly how they died, but most tales agree that they were very skillful horsemen. I don't know why Audrey picked these names, but it can't be coincidental, and this sure is an interesting backstory for the names of two pretty nothing characters. Albert and Victoria. These two are named after Queen Victoria and her husband Prince Albert. Albert's other coach, Helena, shares her name with one of their children. Arthur. Arthur was originally going to be called Clarence, but then a TV magazine ran a competition to give him an official name, and Arthur was the one chosen. Arthur was named after Arthur Sharp, the late grandfather of the competition winner, Luke Sharp. Barry. Barry was a character drafted by Christopher Audrey, but who was eventually dropped due to a lack of enthusiasm from kids. He was named after Barry's scrapyard, where he was rescued from in Universe, one of the biggest scrapyards at the time in the UK. Bear. Bear is named after the growling noises he often makes. Formerly he just wore the number D7101, but says that having a name makes him feel like he really belongs. It's one of the reasons this video is so important. Names mean something in the world of Thomas, or at least they did before consumerism hit us, and there's a reason that Audrey drew attention to the fact that most mainland diesels are nameless, and by extension, not particularly personable. Belle. Belle's name is French for beautiful, but is also a pun on, well, the fact that she has a bell on her firebox. You can tell that the name choices weren't as mesmerizing in the later years of the show. Bill and Ben. These guys were likely named as a reference to Bill and Ben the Flowerpot Men, a pair of mischievous twins from a 1952 British children's TV show called Flowerpot Men. Blister 1 and Blister 2. These guys are two unseen diesels that work on the Earlsdale Railway, and they were named for how bad they are at starting in cold weather. You've also got the fact that they were designed by R.A. Lister, and so Audrey just stuck a B at the front of that for their names. Boko. Boko was named after his Kobo wheel arrangement, but the elements were flipped round for a name that Audrey thought sounded a lot more affectionate. Bridget Hat. Bridget was almost certainly named after Wilbert's half-sister, Bridget Hildred Vere. Culdee. Culdee was named after the mountain Culdee Fell, the mountain that his railway climbs. Culdee Fell itself is Sudric for the Mountain of the Companion of God, which is a reference to the 6th century saint, Saint Machen, who lived in a cave within the mountain. Derek. Originally called Paxman in early drafts, Derek's name was removed from the singular lead episode he has altogether, likely for fears that it would either offend manufacturers of Paxman diesels, or, possibly more terrifyingly, Jeremy Paxman of Interview fame. Diesel 10. Diesel 10 is indeed the 10th diesel introduced in the series, after Diesel, Daisy, Boko, Mavis, Rusty, D261, Derek, and Ari and Bert. Britt Allcroft, however, has supposedly claimed that this was not an intentional decision. Duchess. Duchess's full name is Duchess of Loughborough, which is an entirely fictional post, but she is named in the tradition of her class, which includes engines like Duchess of Hamilton and City of Birmingham. Duck. Although really called Montague, Duck owes his nickname to the fact that Audrey's pannier model had uneven wheels, which caused it to have a waddling gait. The engine was soon nicknamed Duck by Audrey's children. Duke. Duke is named in honour of Earl of Sodor and MSR chairman John Arnold Norrenby. He was also nicknamed Grandpuff, the same nickname given to Wilbert by his children when they saw him smoking his pipe. Elizabeth. Originally just called Grumpy, Elizabeth was renamed by the production team based on Judi Dench's performance of Queen Elizabeth I in the 1998 film Shakespeare in Love. Everyone's favourite, it's Ferdinand.
Right.
This is a very tentative theory of mine, but Ferdinand is such an unusual name that I can't help thinking I could be onto something here. One of the more famous Ferdinands in literature is Ferdinand the Prince of Naples in Shakespeare's play The Tempest. He is, get this, stranded on a far-off, eerie island, as are two absolute idiots, by the way, and the play ends with him leaving said island. It's a bit of a stretch perhaps, but Ferdinand is too rare a name for a non-Mediterranean character to have, unless there's some kind of reference going on here. Maybe Misty Island Rescue is a lost Shakespeare play. It would certainly explain the stunning lyricism of the writing.
I make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold.
Frank. Another engine named after the company that built it, Frank is named after the Frank Perkins firm, as is Perkins on the real-life Ravenglass and Eskdale line. Franz. Franz is the driver of Hugo the Rail Zeppelin, and is named after Franz Kruckenberg, the real-life designer of Hugo's bases. Fred. An unseen diesel on the Skarloey Railway, it's pretty likely that Fred was partly named after Lord Alfred Robins, chairman of the National Coal Board in the 1960s. This is because his basis, the Taleclens Alf, is named after the first part of the same politician's name. Gator. Gator's real name is Gerald, but he was nicknamed Gator for his sloping water tanks and his colour, which both make him look a bit like an alligator. Godred. Godred was named for the ancient Sudrian figure Godred MacHarald, king of Sodor and Man from 979 to 989. Culdee believed this was what made Godred so arrogant, which led to his eventual death. Gordon. Gordon was supposedly named after a rude boy who used to play with Christopher Audrey when he was growing up. Headmaster Hastings. This one-time character was named for Ross Hastings, the writer of his debut episode Faulty Whistles. Hector. Hector is actually an acronym, as confirmed by his merchandise, for Heavily Engineered Coal Truck on Rails. Unless I'm forgetting someone key, he's the only character with an acronym for a name. Hero. Hero's name is very obviously a pun on Hero, which is part of the title of the movie he debuts in. According to John Lee, however, he was originally going to have a different name. His current name could be translated as generous or prosperous in Japanese. Isabel. Isabel is called Isabel because there is a bell on her. This is the reason Thomas has survived for 80 years. Ivo Hugh. This new little engine was named in honour of the former chief mechanical engineer of the Skarloey Railway, Mr. Ivo Hugh, who was shocked by this when he unveiled the name himself. His bassist, the Taleclens Tom Rolt, also has the same number of letters and words. James. James is apparently named after James Furrs, a friend of Audrey's publisher, Edmund Ward's son, but I can't for the life of me find any source for this outside of wiki-type sites that don't have proper cross-referencing. If anyone has a source for this that I don't know about, comment it down below. Ginty and Pug. Ginty and Pug are both named after the nicknames for their respective classes, although Pug was a common term in Scotland for small industrial shunting engines more generally. Jock. Continuing with the Scottish theme, Jock's paintwork reminded Douglas of engines on the Highland Railway, and he suggested the name Jock, which everybody liked, and it stuck. Kwaku. Kwaku was built on a Wednesday because his name is an Akan name for people born on a Wednesday. Are we scraping the trivia barrel here? Little Giant. A proposed character for Season 6, Little Giant shares his name with a former engine of the Festiniog Railway, an 040 saddle tank. Of course, though, Little Giant's basis was the double Fairley, which would go on to be used for Mighty Mac later in the series. Lord Harry/Patrick. Initially named after the Culdee Fell Railway's chairman, Lord Harry Boraine, Lord Harry was stripped of his name due to his reckless attitude, becoming known simply as Number 6. After his heroism on Devil's Back, though, he was renamed Patrick, which interestingly translates to nobleman. Through this noble name, he metaphorically regained the crown that Godred, also named after a king, had lost on the same stretch of railway. I talked about this more in depth in my video on Devil's Back, so check that out if you're interested. Marion. Marion was named for her basis, their Marion revolving steam shovel, built by the creatively named Marion Steam Shovel Company. Mavis. Mavis is supposedly named after one of Wilbert Awdry's old neighbours, but much like with James, I have no idea where this fact comes from. Again, let me know if you have any info on this. Merlin. Merlin was named after the mythological wizard Merlin, on account of his being a King Arthur-class engine, and also believing himself to have invisibility powers. Mike. Mike's name is probably a pun on both his basis, the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway's River Mite, and his 282 wheel arrangement, which is called the Mikado, and is often shortened to Mike itself. Nancy. Nancy's surname, Russian, is likely borrowed from the Manx parish of the same name. Neil. One of the first engines on Sodor, Neil is named for his basis, a Nielsen 040 box tank. Nigel. It's very likely that the cut character Nigel was named after Jack and the Pack's director of photography, Nigel Permain. Oliver. Another one of our possible Awdry connections, Oliver might be named after Oliver Wicks, a member of Stroud Baptist Church and Wilbert Awdry's neighbour in Rodborough. Oliver's name may also have been inspired by Bulliver, a member of his class preserved on the Dart Valley, now South Devon, Railway, which is mentioned at the beginning of Oliver the Western Engine. Interestingly, several illustrations in Oliver the Western Engine erroneously depict him with Bulliver's number 1420, further suggesting that this engine was used as an illustrator's reference. Peter Sam. Formerly called Stuart, Peter Sam was renamed after the controller of the Skarloey Railway, when he was bought Mr. Peter Sam. Porter. Porter was originally going to be called Baldwin, however his final name is a reference to his builder, H.K. Porter, and the fact that he often works at the port of Brendam Docks. Proteus. Proteus is named for a Greek sea god, who was known for being elusive and changing shape, like water. To this day, we use the adjective protean for things that can change quickly. P.T. Boomer. P.T. in P.T. Boomer stands for passing through, as confirmed by Britt Allcroft. Rheneas. Rheneas is Sudric for divided waterfall. He also shares his name with a station on the Skarloey Railway. Rusty. Rusty's name is an amalgamation of his designers and builders, Ruston and Hornsby. Sam. As one of the few very clearly American engines in the show, Sam is possibly named after the caricature of the USA as Uncle Sam. This is, however, unconfirmed. Samson. Samson was probably named after the biblical character Samson, who was very physically strong, as is Samson in the show. Shane. Shane's nickname, the Whispering Giant, is a reference to his basis, the SAR 520, needing its blower component to be on when it was stationary in the yards, which stopped smoke blowing into the cabs due to their long boilers. This is a pretty cool reference for such a terribly unrealistic era of the show. Shane Duany. Although not present in the books, the Culdee Fell Railway's number 5 is also named after a Sudrian mountain, Shane Duany, which translates to the Old Man in English. Sigrid of Arlesdale. Another unseen character, Sigrid is named after an 11th century Sudrian heroine who defeated a Norman invasion at Casnehoen in 1094. Sir Handel. Sir Handel was named after the owner of the Skarloey Railway, at the time he was bought, Sir Handel Lloyd Brown. Formerly, this engine was called Falcon, a kind of bird that dives very fast off cliffs. Skarloey. Skarloey is an indirect translation of the Sudric for Lake in the Woods. According to the Thomas the Tank Engine Man, Wilbert and George Awdry were originally considering naming him Skarkaloey, as a direct translation from the Sudric. I'm quite glad this was changed. Skarloey has a much nicer ring to it. He also, of course, shares his name with both a station and an entire railway. Skiff. Skiff is named after the term that describes a small, usually one-man watercraft. Very fitting. Spencer. According to writer Abby Grant, Spencer was named after the producer Simon Spencer. Stafford. Stafford is very simply named after the railway his basis was built for, the North Staffordshire Railway. Stanley, Railway Series. Although he didn't actually have a proper name, in universe the Mid-Sodor Railway's number 2 was nicknamed Stanley by the workers, after the British politician and later Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin. This was because the engine was designed and built by Baldwin Locomotive Works. Stanley TV series. Stanley is likely named after the town of Stanley in County Durham in England, because it's just next to the museum town of Beamish, which Great Waterton was largely based on. It's also right up in my neck of the woods, so that was pretty amazing to find out. Stephen. Stephen is of course named for his very famous basis, the first steam engine ever built, Stephenson's rocket. Thomas. Thomas was named after one of Wilbert's homemade models, which was itself named by Christopher Audrey upon receiving it, probably sometime in the early 1940s. Toad. Toad is named after the moniker given to brake vans on the Great Western Railway, and it's also a pun on Toad because Oliver, and later Douglas in the books, tow him everywhere. Whiff.
My name's Whiff because I'm a bit smelly.
Wilbert. Named after Wilbert Audrey, Wilbert is not just in the books, but also a real engine named after Audrey on the Dean Forest Railway, where he once served as their president. So, there are the meanings behind 72 names in the books and TV show. I hope you found this entertaining and or useful. I hope to be back with a video essay fairly soon. Thanks for watching.